All right, we are here with the one and only Dr. Logan Levkoff, a fearless fighter against anti-Semitism, commentator, and also educator. Thank you so much for coming to discuss this very very escaping topic in these wild times. It's nice to have something that's not, in the midst of the news and everything.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. Yes, I agree that talking about something that seems, I mean, even with its implications, a little bit lighter and fluffier is it's really quite lovely these days.
Yes, yes. So we're gonna talk about the Netflix series Nobody Wants This. What you thought about it. I had very strong feelings while watching it in one direction. We'll see how you feel. But first of all, just the concept. How do you feel? Just maybe if you want, we'll kind of give listeners an overview. Do you want to go for that and just give people a general idea of what the show is?
Sure. The series is the kind of fictionalized story of the writer, right? A woman who was not born Jewish who fell in love with a Jewish man and converted. Now, of course, the Netflix series is slightly different. It's about a young woman who winds up falling in love with a rabbi and has to deal with her new boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, sister-in-law, brother, mother, and all that a Jewish family brings to the table. And I mean, to be honest, she and her sister, which I guess is the part that's sort of like me, talk about relationships on a podcast for a living, but they seem to be oddly clueless in the world of Judaism, considering they live in Los Angeles.
Right, yeah,
Who knew?
I was astonished. I don't know. I mean, the writer, I guess, does live a Jewish life, but some of the observances there, there's different denominations, and some people observe more and some people observe less, but some of the things there were completely from nowhere. So I'll just give a few examples of what I
Sure.
was struck by. So number one, the way he does Havdalah, maybe I don't know about other denominations, but the going out and like waiting and counting for stars, especially in Los Angeles, where you probably don't see a star even at midnight. It's just like, just look at your calendar, look at the app, find out when the Shabbat is over. But just like standing out there together counting stars, kumbaya, I've never seen.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I mean there's probably a lot of artistic license in it, and that was I think it was supposed to be sort of a romanticized version of making Jewish rituals look sexy. I mean, not that they
okay.
have to be, but like there was clearly there clearly is a desire at some point during the show to make Judaism appealing, as if it's not on its
Mhm.
own.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's just like to me, it seemed a detail that was a recurring theme. Like Havdalah seemed to have been a really central observance there, and I didn't understand that. And then there's the part, spoiler alerts to everyone, where Joanne comes to their house and they serve her this very Jewish lunch, and they're serving bagels, chopped liver, and if you notice, there's also cream cheese on the table. And so like yes, it's all the Jewish buttons, but chopped liver and cream cheese is not something that Jews usually serve together.
No, I mean it well and also there's obviously a lot in there that's meant to sort of be nods to certain like Jewish cultural moments without it being
Hmm.
real. Or
Hmm.
I shouldn't say that. I mean, obviously some people live a certain way, but yeah, if I don't think its purpose was to show like the facts, all the facts.
Got it. Okay, and so now to the big $1 million question. There were a lot of articles about there from the New York Times to the Forward to other places. Is number one, do you think there was something anti-Semitic about it? And number two, do you think specifically the way it portrayed Jewish women was offensive?
Those those are two impossible questions to answer, but I'll try and answer them to the best of my ability. So I want to say this. I do think it's possible to enjoy something for its entertainment factor and not get too bogged down in all of the implications particularly at a time where, as a Jewish person, tensions are running so high that you're constantly on edge, like waiting for something horrible to happen. And I think it's okay to enjoy something and say, that was fun, that was entertaining. I didn't love all of it, but I smiled for a little bit. And some of the things that perhaps were stereotypes or tropes that if you know, I get the joke. I'm in on the joke, maybe, so I could let some things go. However, it seemed at times a little bit lazy in the stereotypes, particularly the stereotypes about Jewish women. And I got her permission to say this. I asked my teenage daughter, I said, what did you think of the show? She said, okay, so I loved it, but it also like fell on a lot of stereotypes.
Mhm.
And I was impressed that she had recognized that, right? Because I think now they're all talking about what does it mean to be a Jew? Who is a Jew? What does it mean to be a Jewish woman? So she can understand and enjoy some of like the rom-com part of it
Mhm.
and also recognize, that's not the greatest way to show who we are as a people. We're far more welcoming than wanting to call, our brother-in-law's new girlfriend and her sister whore one and whore two, right? That's
It's
not really
terrible.
what we do.
Yeah.
Horrible, horrible.
Uh, yeah, look, I'll tell you what struck me when I was watching with
Uh,
my wife. Number one is the fact that yes, Jewish women were portrayed in a negative way, but there doesn't seem to have been one who was positive, meaning you can have the like, that everyone has like the yenta and the mother-in-law. Okay, those are things that get their way on screens. But just the fact that there was no good person, I think that I can't think. I mean, Adam Brody, Noah does seem like someone who you can say is a good person. We're going to talk about that, especially as a rabbi, what portraying him as a rabbi does. But just there's no positive one. Like she shows up at the bar with the Jewish women and at the basketball with the Jewish women, and everyone's really horrible. And then when you told me that the mother-in-law is Tova Feldush, I was like, wow, because like I don't know, what is she, Golda or something? She has like
She's been everything. She's
yes,
been everything.
yeah,
She's been
okay.
everything, really.
Hmm.
I
So
I do think, yeah, by the way, I get all of those things. And there are definitely moments where I watch sort of like smiling and also like looking through my fingers, like, oh, well, what's gonna happen next? But yeah, I thought there were parts that were a little lazy. And I
mm,
say that because there is no way, and I'll just talk about the non-Jewish woman's experience. And not that I'm speaking
mm,
directly from it, but I have plenty of friends who've live in Los Angeles to not know what the word shalom means,
yeah,
to not have ever been to a bar or bat mitzvah at any point in time during your
right,
life seems a little ridiculous. The likelihood is that anyone growing up in Los Angeles probably has encountered a few Jews before.
right, and it has like some clue. Yes.
So,
Uh,
totally.
Wow. I guess, and then the other thing that bothered me was the portrayal of Judaism, 2 episodes specifically.
Yeah.
And again, spoiler for those who didn't watch it, go watch it, and then you won't feel like you're missing out here. One is when there's this guy who's clearly doing something he shouldn't be doing, and then he gets caught sort of, and he makes a donation to the synagogue to keep the rabbi silent about what he's doing.
Right.
And so, like to me, that was I don't know any synagogue where you just call in and be like, I'm going to make a big donation and don't say that. And then a similar scenario, a similar scene at the end of it is when the mother-in-law, which I now am horrified to discover is Tova Feldush, it walks into the kitchen and she sees the prosciutto, the
No, yeah.
pork, and she just like digs in. And then she's like wanting to keep that silent. I think there's very much this vibe of like that we, people enjoy in Hollywood to show religious people like that, often, actually, more often priests and Christians, where like there's this hypocrisy, like we're claiming to be, which I think does not exist so much in Judaism because people really do what they want and take pride in it. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but you don't have so much that culture of like, oh my gosh, like the second I can sneak some like Jews who want to sneak bacon.
Right. Well, I think that's the part that is always hard about telling a story in Hollywood. In my well, telling any story in a TV or movie space where writers are writing for other people and it's not necessarily people who have a totally
Mhm.
authentic experience. There is complexity to being Jewish and deciding what rules you're going to follow and what not. And instead of using that as an opportunity to tell a non-Jewish woman about these complexities, right? They're hidden.
Mhm.
They're hidden. And inevitably in the end, it looks like the Jewish person is a hypocrite, right? For prescribing certain things in front of this young woman and not doing it herself, right? Because she was basically, again, spoiler, but Joanne brings a charcuterie plate to brunch at
Yeah.
at her rabbi boyfriend's mother's house, and of course there's pork
Yeah.
on the plate, and she doesn't understand, and that's the pork that the rabbi's mom dives into.
Right. I mean, it goes back to what you were saying, like who grows up in Los Angeles and doesn't know you don't bring to a Jewish family pork.
Yeah, there is definitely that. I think I understand in a world where anti-Semitism is top of mind, where we talk about interfaith marriage and relationships, where we want to increase our numbers. I get the fear that so many people have about what it means if someone, let alone a rabbi, is dating someone who is not Jewish. But I think there's an amazing story to be told around that, right? About why this is so complex, as opposed to just making this poor girl like the hot blonde thing that they refer to as a shiksa a million times over. And she's always the outsider and she's made to feel really bad. And she has to like go through hoops and hurdles in order to just get like a modicum of respect.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole discussion is like, they don't talk about it so much, but like the fact that his family fled the Soviet Union and they have this whole history of persecution, it does explain them being more suspicious of outsiders. I think that's understandable. But I don't know of a Jewish family where you would have that kind of response. And it's interesting that my wife was saying, "Oh, it's terrible the way they're portraying Jewish women," and I'm thinking, also Jewish men there are not coming out great. Like the brother is pretty horrible. The father is discussion, but yeah, it's
But I do like a good Schwitz scene. I mean,
I was just about to talk about that. Yes, because like who ever heard? I mean, I haven't ever like nothing. I mean, who go I like never like it's just not something that's done. I don't know where they got it from. I don't know when people used to do it. There was one rabbi who actually got into a scandal that involved that in, I don't know, 2015, whatever. But it's usually, I mean, that really hit on all the stereotypes, like all the Jewish men, and they go to the
yeah,
Schwitz, and the brother wants to become a CEO of the company because, of course. I mean, even the contrast between the wealth in his family's home and her family's home is also kind of ties into all those stereotypes. But yeah, they really hit all the buttons.
they did. They did. And at the same time, I want to say it is kind of, although I may be horrified now saying this, it's possible to enjoy like some of it, like the development of this romance, right? Which is really sweet and cute. And you do root for them, like in a way. And at the same time, you do look on a little bit like a train wreck because you don't know how the Jewish community is going to be portrayed. And it would be one thing if the lead-in about this community wasn't that they were Jews, but they are clearly representative of the Jewish community,
Mhm.
or the congregation, or the ex Jewish girlfriend and her friends. And by the way, that to me is also the part that I find highly problematic that the scene I believe, I think it's the opening scene. I can't remember the first one, but it basically opens with a girl who is in love with the rabbi. She's Jewish and she's wearing an engagement ring that he didn't give her, that she
Wow.
found.
I mean that the way they portray Rebecca, I look as a whole, I really feel that they really portray Jewish women negatively, but the way they portray her as this like desperate to get married, begging him to marry her, just and then trying to torpedo his relationship as even afterwards, and that she's this I don't know if this everyone's gonna understand this word in Yiddish, but she's a nebuch, which is like someone that's like downtrodden and you like feel bad for. And it's like that throughout, where his
Yeah.
wannabe fiance is just this like broken person who can't get over it, whose only hope is for him to marry her. It's just I felt very wrong. And the contrast between the like sad, sorry Jewish girlfriend, desperate to get married, can't get over it, and the like easygoing, just cool, easygoing, emotionally intact and available girlfriend. It's just I was struck by it.
And you're right to be. I think that there's, by the way, there's nothing wrong with someone saying that they at one point they would like to be the rabbi's wife or the rabbi themselves, right? But I don't know anyone that would also, violate her partner's personal space to wear a symbol of a major relationship, religious milestone, and just kind of, you know, jump over like the process and just
Mhm.
say it's fine, right? I mean, someone looks a little like sociopathic. It's not
Right.
it's not a great look for us at all.
Yes. I say something. I'll say something now. I hope I don't get into trouble for this, but if I do, may God help me. The one person I did think that I'm like, I met that person before was Esther, the sister-in-law. I'm like, yeah, I've seen that. Everything else, I
Yeah.
was like, I've never seen something like that. But Esther, but it wasn't. It didn't tie into any like stereotype. It was just like she was tough.
Yeah, and I say, by the way, I really like the word broad. I know that people people have like a very visceral reaction to it, but like she's a tough broad. Like, she doesn't put up with things. She's tough. She knows who she is. She happens to be hysterical despite the fact that she's kind of mean. But I
Mhm.
think that it clearly comes from this place of insecurity and wanting to protect her friend despite the fact that she looks horrible horrible for a period of time.
Mhm.
But there is some redemption for her in the way she winds up
Mhm.
treating her daughter at the end. That there's a connection of her
Mhm.
becoming a bat mitzvah and her realizing what this moment is actually about. And so there is like a nice story to that, but
Mhm.
you have to get past a lot of episodes
Yeah.
in order to see this other part of her. And
Mhm.
I often wonder if we weren't, I mean, if we weren't in this really just tough time and feeling like we are constantly under the microscope as Jews, if we would have more tolerance for some of this. But I think part of it is that we are under the microscope and we are so concerned with how we are portrayed and wanting to make sure that we control our own narratives, that when those narratives don't seem genuine or seem like they are deliberate caricatures, right, for the sake of audience numbers, it's painful. It's painful.
And it's an interesting point. You mentioned the like reception for the show with what's going on. A few years ago, there was Jonah Hill. I forgot what it was, also about an interfaith relationship, where it was him, an African American woman.
Oh,
And there was
yeah.
huge outrage. And I actually think that had the world not been as insane as it is now for Jews, I think there would be more outrage at this. But people just are busier with, real things. And so I think that's partially why it got a sort of somewhat off. I actually want to talk for a second about the stereotypes there for non-Jewish women, because I think that's also
Mm,
very important. And I
hmm.
think those stereotypes are harmful in our community and for the relationship we have with the non-Jewish
Yeah.
world. And so um, this stereotype of non-Jewish women as being always emotionally healthy and physically and emotionally available and just like with the sense of
And
humor.
and sexy and beautiful, and they're like out to like take the men away from us.
It's I think
Yeah,
it's just so untrue and harmful because ultimately, if you're a Jewish man who's sheltered and you see this, you're like, wow, this is what it's like. But it's not. Right?
yeah,
There's a real life out there, and most people are just real people and they, have their difficult times and they're the good times, and it's not like it's never gonna be one way or the other. No one's either 100% like perfect or 100% imperfect. And I think that there's two harmful stereotypes that might, like, if you're a Jewish person who's sheltered, it might affect you. Number one is the idea about non-Jewish women as being, these. It's honestly a stereotype against women. Like it's as if they're always 100% there, available, and just whatever you want them to be. And then on the other hand, I think also you have this stereotype that is harmful where the non-Jewish women are there to get the men. Then there's these
yeah.
non-Jewish women, and it's not by coincidence that Jonah Hill and this case, you don't have the opposite. There's no show that I know about where you have a Jewish woman, and there's this non-Jewish man coming to get her. So I think there is this stereotype of like a non-Jewish woman coming for the Jewish men. Um, it,
Yeah, it
your
definitely
thoughts?
fetishizes non-Jewish women a lot, right? That they're this like exotic, amazing human that like is going to fix whatever isn't, whatever I've dealt with women in the past too. Um, yeah, it's definitely not a great look. I
And
would
they'll
rather.
never want to get married, right? The Jewish woman is going to want you to put a ring on it and responsibility and family, but the non-Jewish woman, it's just like, yeah, sure, not even it's not even crossing her mind.
Well, and I mean, in this case, because so much of her professional life is spent talking about her sex life and her dating life and
Mhm.
how, for her sister anyway, like actually dating would have a real negative impact on their future, right? On their
Mhm.
career potential. So there is an interesting dynamic there, and in even seeing the two sisters play out differently as non-Jewish women
Mhm.
too. Um, but I feel like this is. It's always I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. I like to say that I am, and I don't mean this in the parasitic sense, but I think that I'm a little bit of an opportunist. Again, not in a negative way, but I think that we need to be using all the opportunities we have to share these stories and to have conversations that are thoughtful, that, have the ability to dig deep into some things and let things go. And so shows like this, anything that talks about the Jewish community gives us an opportunity to have inter and intra community conversations about what's accurate, what's inaccurate. If there are some tropes or stereotypes, where do they come from, right? Like
Mhm.
there's always a trope, but there's never an explanation about how it got there. And actually, maybe it was anti-Semitism that got us here.
Mhm.
So we have an opportunity to sit down, even with our kids, if they're watching this, and say, tell me what you thought about how Jews were
Mhm.
portrayed. How is it similar or different to the way in which we practice or live our lives as Jews? How
Mhm.
would you feel if that was you or if someone came into your life? And that's, I think, where the magic really happens. It's less about what we watch, it's more about the conversations that take place afterwards. And that's a really good way to dive into also to your family's values about what it means to be Jewish.
Wow. Oh, you know what? That's a very important and interesting perspective, meaning even though it does have these stereotypes, to use them as an opportunity to have a conversation with our families, community, And it ties into the work that you do in terms of like educating young people and talking openly about their vision and their view of the world. Absolutely.
Right. And I think part of this is that, these pop culture moments, they're not going away anytime soon.
Hmm.
Some things we love, some things we hate. So instead of, kicking and screaming, we have an opportunity to use them to our advantage. And in this case, using them to our advantage means we use them for jumping off points for conversations. And we can do that in big groups, we can do that one-on-one. I mean, even maritally, right? When does this resemble the relationship that we have? Is this how you saw me?
Right.
Less Joanna and Noah, but in
Verily,
terms
who is that the
Sasha
friend
and
with
Esther.
oh there's Sasha and Esther and who else were you
Mhm.
mentioning?
Oh, I'm saying beyond Joanne and Noah for
Mhm.
Esther and Sasha. So, two Jews to say, is this what do you see our
Yeah,
marriage as being like
right.
this? Is this what we do? I mean, maybe there's an opportunity to hold a mirror up to your own life and say, this does not represent me at all. Or, maybe there are some things in here that I'm seeing now this way and I'm not
Uh-huh.
really that into.
All right, fair. Yes, that's a very good point. Another point that maybe it only struck me as a rabbi, maybe other people find him very appealing. So Noah, who's the rabbi, and now I'm gonna ask you his name a second. The Noah as an actor is
Oh, Adam Brody.
Adam Brody, yes. So Adam Brody is like a rabbi, but it was driving me crazy because I know myself, I know many, many other rabbis, and I don't know anybody who is at all times so dripping with self-righteousness and this like never emotionally out of check, just just always, always, always.
Cool.
It,
Constantly cool.
no, but always, it actually was hurtful. Like, always preachy, always like so preachy,
Mhm.
and on the one hand, like so preachy and cheesy. On the other hand, like you have this everything's okay. Like you tell him what you want to do, and he'll find some source that says it's okay. Like as long as drove me crazy. Maybe there are rabbis who are like that, who are just like always being, even in their rabbi life, are just, even in their personal life, are always still a rabbi. And just it drove me crazy because the contrast there where
Yeah.
like everything is acceptable, but also there's always some like, he's sitting around smoking with her friends and like he's referring to this Talmudical discussion about gossip. Like or in the middle, he's like lashon hara, and
Lashon Hara.
maybe I'm doing that now. By the way, I'm probably doing lashon hara now. Uh, it drove me nuts because like on the one hand, there he is smoking with her friends. On the other hand, he's sermonizing to them. So I
Right.
don't know.
So I before you brought up the thing about the friends, because I did forget about the friends situation. I was thinking that maybe there's a part of that sort of preachiness and teachy thing going on because we have to see him desperately trying to educate his partner so that she falls in love with
Mhm.
Judaism and wants to convert. Maybe that's a part of it. But then the part with the friends I did forget about. But the friends found him so endearing, which I can see this constant like preachiness. It's all okay. We're gonna, there are ways to legitimize all of the things that we're doing and feeling. I could see that, especially for a rabbi, being particularly perturbing
But
throughout
also
a
then the
season.
like anyhow, it always just sermonizing. I was just like, or even never mind the rabbi part, just like as a human being, like
Yeah.
never losing his cool in any, in any significant way. Like it was something else, but maybe there are people like that. I just
Well,
have
but I wonder, and it strikes me now in this sense because a lot of it was so faith-based, right? Like story-based in terms of
Mhm.
us as a faith that, there may have been an opportunity. And I think, by the way, this is a much bigger conversation, but I think one of the things we have I'm not going to say failed at, but one of the things the world has not done a great job with is talking about who Jews are. That we are not just a faith, right? We are a tribe, we are a people. And there's an opportunity to talk about Judaism and the Jewish people without just talking about like scripture. there's,
Right.
there's something else. And maybe that's what we were missing, right? We were missing the peoplehood story as opposed to just the faith story.
I mean, as you say that, I'm struck by the scene at the bat mitzvah where they're dancing around and the only song they found was Hava Nagila and they're dancing the hora like it's the 1930s or it's just like those old kibbutz videos where everyone's around in a circle and it's black and white. I don't know. It was just like and that is our peoplehood. That's like the cultural stuff. But it was also like very stereotypical.
Yeah, well, it's old. I mean, there are these old school moments I think that we all have, but there are opportunities also to talk about other, newer, perhaps modern moments
Yeah.
in Judaism, as opposed to, just when you need to tell a story that resonates with people, you go to the most common one you can find.
Yeah. Very good point. Last question. The Jewish Chronicle ran a piece on this. How do you feel about the fact that there was no they didn't write about Israel, but it's been produced after October 7th. No mention of October 7th, no mention of Israel, no mention that I can think of anti-Semitism. Your thoughts on that?
I think it is impossible to tell a story about what it means to be Jewish today without talking about this moment in time for the Jewish community at large, which is October 7th. And there is an opportunity to talk about us as a people and acknowledge Israel, right? Whether it's flags in a synagogue or there are opportunities to share that with the world. I understand it's not the most fun subject to have to talk about the atrocities that took place on October 7th, but if we're going to really attempt to talk about what the real Jewish community looks like, we can't avoid that moment in time. The same way you wouldn't avoid the mention of the Holocaust, or you wouldn't mention, what Noah's parents go through having to flee the Soviet Union. This is now
Hmm.
part of our story. So I think we have to find ways to tell it. I mean, I can't imagine they do it, but I guess that remains to be seen.
Wow. All right, Dr. Logan Levkoff on the Netflix. Nobody wants that. Thank you so much. I came out with a lot of insights and inspiration. Thank you for always being an inspiration. And let people to follow their stereotypes. L'chaim. Enjoy if you didn't watch it or if you watched it and feel guilty because it's somewhat anti-Semitic. I think that's a new perspective there, a positive perspective. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. And